Welcome to the Potter Discussion.
Welcome back to the Potter Discussion. This is episode 108, and on today's episode, we will be discussing what would happen if Dumbledore died in just the first book. Let's do this. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Potter Discussion 108. We are here, and today we are talking about a very interesting situation. What would happen if Dumbledore died in the Philosopher's Stone? In the very first book, how would the story play out? This is a flip the script. We haven't had one of these in a while. This is only the second in the Flip the Script series, so a very exciting day. I am very excited to be recording today and to be making this episode. And there are a couple things that I would like to address before we get into this. And first is a mistake that I made in the last episode. I know, another mistake. It's crazy. I got my shows mixed up. So I said that the Harry Potter game show would be launching on the new year on HBO Max, and I was wrong. It's a Harry Potter reunion where they're showing all the movies, and that is going on. That is going on the New Year's on HBO Max. But the Harry Potter trivia show is already out. It's on live television. I think it's TBS. I think it's the channel. Debuted on November 28th. And I actually just watched the first episode last night, and I will say it is great. So definitely make sure you set your DVRs to record that. It drops, the episodes come out every Sunday, just like this one, just like this podcast, so you can listen to these episodes and then sit down at your TV and watch some Harry Potter trivia stuff. And it's really fun, actually. It's super fun to play along and really test your knowledge in Harry Potter. And there's some really interesting and different questions that you won't expect. I know, just thinking back, one of the questions was what was a couch that the Grangers had in their house when Hermione obliterated her parents in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1. So, crazy stuff, very specific, and for every Harry Potter fan out there, definitely go check that out because it is a blast, and I'm sure you will enjoy it. And another very exciting announcement, well, not quite an announcement, but I will be answering the challenge question. Just for the first challenge question, I did give you 2 weeks to think of the answer. The question was, so this was the quotes edition of the challenge question, and the challenge quote is, "And I'll be wanting a pay raise." If you can think about that, the answer to the challenge question, this is so exciting. Slughorn said the answer to this question. He said that after Harry and Dumbledore were leaving his house at the very beginning of the Half-Blood Prince, when he accepted the invitation to return to Hogwarts, and Dumbledore and Harry were just leaving, and he ran out and he said, fine, I'll do it. And yeah, that's the answer to the challenge question. That was very fun. I will do some more challenge questions in the future, and tell me what you got. Did you get it right? I'll absolutely love to know what your thoughts were on Quizmaster, on the challenge questions. So definitely send me an email. My email is ThePotterDiscussion@gmail.com. That is ThePotterDiscussion@gmail.com. And if you don't want to email me, there are also 2 links in the show notes below that are still available. The SpeakPipe page link and the Google form link for anything you want to hear or say on the show. So definitely click those links, send me an email, do whatever you want to do, and tell me your thoughts. I'd absolutely love to know what you have to say. Okay, let's get into today's episode. So, the first question I think we should answer is, how would Dumbledore die? If he is going to die in the first book, I think it would be towards the end, because he has to be established as a character if his death is going to mean anything. So, who would kill him and why, how, all those different things. And just personally, I think it would be Quirrell. So here is how I think it would go down. So the year would play out as it does, and at the very end, when Harry is in the dungeons with Quirrell and Voldemort, and they are, battling it out, I think Harry is going to do the same thing, and Quirrell's gonna grab him, and then they're gonna have a whole scuffle. But Voldemort is going to revive Quirrell because Voldemort does not want to die. And it would be very difficult, but I think Voldemort would somehow, take over Quirrell's body, making it not Quirrell's own, and making it Voldemort's, because of course we know that Voldemort could not touch Harry, but if he's in Quirrell's body, it wouldn't be his pain that he's feeling. So that, I think, is what would happen, and Harry would still be, kind of on the ground, he would be passed out, but Dumbledore would appear much sooner, and they would have a battle, Voldemort / Quirrell, and Dumbledore would have a duel, and I think Quirrell / Voldemort would win, because it wouldn't be Voldemort's body that he was killing, so it wouldn't be a challenge for him for Voldemort to use all these difficult spells and stuff like that. And I think Dumbledore would also be trying to protect Harry, so it's kind of lose-lose for Dumbledore and a win-win for Voldemort, because Dumbledore can either save himself and Harry dies, or save Harry and he dies, and Voldemort will, even if he gets killed, he'll just go out of Quirrell's body and escape, and even if he doesn't, well, then he doesn't. So I think that is how Dumbledore would die, and it would really be a big shock for the castle, because that is a huge deal for Dumbledore to die. I mean, that is crazy. So I think that's how he will die. But now let's move on to some other interesting questions. So, the next thing I think we should talk about is Harry. So we all know Dumbledore tells Harry a lot about himself, about his past, about his parents, even about his future. But if Dumbledore isn't there, who is going to tell him? We all know that Dumbledore didn't tell anyone about Harry's true role in the whole Voldemort situation until Harry was much older. And we don't, at least until, it was definitely past the first book. Dumbledore was not, of course, he was making plans, but he wasn't telling people about how Harry had to die. So no one was going to be able to tell him that. So I think one of the biggest takeaways from this, and one of the biggest effects, would be that Harry wouldn't know about his past. He would be left in the dark for much, much longer than we see him, because if Dumbledore doesn't tell him, he's going to have to find out on his own. And we all know that, of course, he will go searching, he will go to Godric's Hollow, and he will do all these things, since that's, if Dumbledore's death is only going to empower him more, because if he doesn't know, so he wants to find out. And if Dumbledore doesn't tell him, Harry wants to find out for himself. But that means he's not going to know for a very long time, because as, 13, 14-year-old, I mean, he can compete in the Goblet of Fire, but he certainly can't leave the grounds by himself. So I think that will be a very challenging part of Harry's, at least, childhood before Dumbledore dies, because if he doesn't know who he is, he's never going to find out without someone else helping him, because he has to somehow discover what Dumbledore would tell him on his own. And that would be a big challenge. I mean, like a really big challenge, because it was a challenge for Dumbledore to find out, even though he was a fully functioning adult, at the time of Harry's parents' death. But Harry was 1. Harry was 1 year old, barely born when it happened, so he's not going to know anything. And he's going to have to just put the pieces together, and he's going to have to figure it out all on his own, which is, a very daunting task. And I would absolutely not hold it against him if he could not figure it out. Yeah, and I think that is probably one of the biggest takeaways and effects that would come out of Dumbledore's death in the first book. Harry would not know about his past. another huge thing that could change about the castle when Dumbledore died would be the castle. Hogwarts would definitely not work the same. I mean, it's not like passing times in the halls are different or something like that, but the dynamic would be completely different. And all these different things that used to happen likely wouldn't. For example, the school song. I hate to say it, but the school song, sorry, I'm getting teary. The school song was one of the best parts. Yeah, definitely not. The teachers did not enjoy that, and they would definitely not continue the school song. But that's just an example. Hogwarts would not function the same way. And in many cases, I think that it would be almost unhealthy for it too. Because Dumbledore had a very specific way of running things, and if his way of running things was still used without Dumbledore, I don't know how they would be able to survive. And I don't know how, without Dumbledore, they could support what they were doing without the whole challenge of figuring out, how to run a magical school. And besides the fact of the challenge of trying to figure out how to run a magical school, is the success of actually doing it. Because 1 or 2 days off, even 1 or 2 hours off, even, waking up on the wrong side of the bed and not functioning properly for the day could be disastrous. We already saw it only takes 1-2 hours for Sirius Black to break into the castle, and he is not an evil person, as we of course know, but if everyone thinks he is and he breaks in, what's gonna happen? Are they gonna be, oh no, let's kill him, something like that? It's just the smallest little things could lead to horrible results. And Dumbledore knew that, and he put his absolute most effort into keeping the castle safe, keeping the people inside it safe, and making it a good environment for learning. But Dumbledore's gone. And Dumbledore was the person who was the expert. Dumbledore was the person who knew how to run a castle. And McGonagall or even Snape, they would have to learn pretty quick. And if they didn't, the castle would likely go to ruin, because it would be way too difficult to make the school still function and even thrive under a different rule if Dumbledore was not there. And I think it would be very, very difficult in the beginning. And if they could figure it out early on, I think that they could probably go back to something that was kind of semi-normal. That was semi what it used to be. But if they can't figure it out, at least, in the first couple weeks, I don't know, Hogwarts might not be looking too good, and it would become a hotspot for dark magic attacks and all these different things that they are bent on defending against. So, like Harry not knowing his past, the castle wouldn't know its headmaster. And speaking of Sirius Black, Sirius would be caught. I'm just saying it outright. Without Dumbledore, Sirius Black is a goners, because there's no way he could get out without, first of all, Harry and Hermione's help, but also Dumbledore telling Harry and Hermione to do that, along with giving them enough time to get Buckbeak and believing their story. Just think how instrumental Dumbledore is and was in the, in Sirius managing to escape. So let's just think. Without Dumbledore, Harry and Hermione wouldn't go back in time. Sirius would be given the Dementor's kiss, and that would be it. Buckbeak would also likely die, and that night would be completely different. It would be losses on all accounts, and Sirius would be caught, Buckbeak would die, and Draco would win, and the Ministry would do its job. And that, I think, is what would happen on that night. But let's just think. Sirius getting caught is much more than just Sirius getting caught. Harry relies on Sirius for so much when they grow up. When Harry grows up and when he needs guidance. And when Harry needs someone to see, someone who is like him in the magical world that will talk. And Sirius is really the only person who Harry is family with, because Sirius is Harry's godfather, and that really makes a connection between Harry and Sirius, and we really see that in the later books, especially in the 5th book when Sirius dies, and in the 4th book when Sirius helps Harry in the Triwizard Tournament. Harry really relies on Sirius and sees him as one of his closest confidants and friends. And without him, Harry would likely struggle a ton. And without Dumbledore, he has almost no mentors at Hogwarts or otherwise. There's only maybe Mr. Weasley and Mrs. Weasley that could help him after that point. And there's nothing he can do besides just wait it out. Just wait Hogwarts out, wait Voldemort out, try to just recover from the damage that Voldemort would wreak on the castle. And I think that's it. Yeah. Sirius would be caught, and that is that. And along those same lines, we have Lupin. So Lupin was also kind of revealed on that night, and he was revealed as being a werewolf. Not exactly a very good thing to be exposed as in the wizarding world. And from that, I think Lupin would be in Azkaban. Lupin, without Dumbledore, Lupin would be in Azkaban from being a werewolf, because when Dumbledore fired him for being a werewolf, because of course he had no other option, he was kind of putting a protection on him, saying he can't be at Hogwarts, but he certainly can't be anywhere else, almost. And without that, without Lupin maybe even not being hired, werewolves would not be in a very good situation, because of course Umbridge then comes in and is making all these different laws about and around werewolves, making it very difficult for them to live. In addition to Dumbledore not even being there for Lupin, Umbridge would also be making it even more difficult for Lupin to live with all of her laws and all of the different things that she would put in place. So Lupin being in Azkaban might happen, and of course it wouldn't happen right away, but it would eventually come to pass, because if, let's say, werewolves aren't thrown in Azkaban for the first couple years that Umbridge is kind of in power and passing those laws, werewolves being in a situation where they have to register themselves as werewolves is probably going to pass without Dumbledore's standing behind all of these people who would be negatively affected by the laws that Umbridge would pass. And for Dumbledore to not be there, there is nothing that would be negative that might come out of Umbridge doing that kind of thing, of Umbridge making those laws. And she would go right ahead and do it, and Fudge would only encourage her. Without Dumbledore, at least from his perspective, Dumbledore's whispering lies into his ears, trying to get into the Minister of Magic position. And without Dumbledore there, Fudge can properly be thinking about how werewolves are bad, and Umbridge and Fudge can work together to make this world. That would make it so that Lupin could not live, and he would be put in Azkaban. Okay, so now we are really getting into the nitty-gritty, into the things that would really be bad. One of those things being the Triwizard Tournament. The Triwizard Tournament was a very difficult thing for Harry to complete, and without the help of people like Moody, without the influence of him, Harry would likely have not completed the task. And I think without Dumbledore, Harry would have died. I know it's a crazy, crazy thought, but I don't know if Harry could have survived in the Triwizard Tournament without Dumbledore, because Dumbledore didn't have a huge kind of impact in the actual tasks. But in the end, when he came back from the graveyard and Moody took him into his office, Barty Crouch Jr. was going to kill Harry. And without Dumbledore, Harry would have died right there. So without the help of Dumbledore, Harry would die. And let's just say, for argument's sake, that he didn't die in the tasks. That still leaves that entire year open for opportunities for Harry to die, for Harry to be seen, for Harry to be somehow interacting with the darkness around him and be enveloped in it. If that means death, if that means Moody would win or Barty Crouch Jr. would win, I think of course we would never know, but if Dumbledore wasn't there to stop him, yes, Moody would have killed Harry. And there's no doubt about it that Harry would not have survived even the first, second, or third, or maybe even fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh years. He would not have gotten through his life at Hogwarts without Dumbledore. And Dumbledore was really kind of just there, standing over Harry, watching his every move, and making sure that no one could touch him. Because if they did, that would mean that Dumbledore's plans would go completely off the rails, and he would have no way of getting them back on. Because if Harry's life was somehow in danger, or if Harry's health, if Harry's health was somehow very much compromised, I think Dumbledore would have done everything in his power to get him back on track, not only for Harry's sake, but for everyone's sake. Of course, Dumbledore did care for Harry, which is a motivating factor, but Dumbledore also cares for everyone, for all the good people on the good side. And without Harry, the good side is pretty much done, because we all know that Dumbledore's plan at the very end was to sacrifice Harry, killing the very last Horcrux, and then bringing Harry back to life. So there are just so many different pieces at play, and it would be very, very difficult for Harry to be somehow otherwise. If Harry were to survive the fourth year without Dumbledore, suffice it to say, I would be impressed. Before we close out this episode, I want to just quickly go over one of the big things. One of the things that I think we've just kind of been talking about this entire episode about Voldemort and Dumbledore and Harry is that Harry and all of the good guys would have lost. Voldemort would have won without Dumbledore. And I want to just mention how much of an achievement that is for Dumbledore, because being the person that almost carries your team over to victory in a sport, in a game, in any kind of thing, that's a huge role. And if you do it over and over and over again, you become one of the best players on that team. And that was what Dumbledore was doing. He had all these different dominoes set up, and he was about to push them all over. But in the first book, if he died, that stack would just be waiting there, and no one would be there to push them. So, if he didn't, if all the things in the end did not work, if the dominoes didn't fall, Harry would likely have to fall in their place. And even if he managed to do all the things Dumbledore had wanted to do, I don't think Harry could have managed to do those with the same kind of intent and the same almost completion as Dumbledore would have and as Dumbledore did. So all in all, I don't think that Harry and everyone else would have stood a chance up against Voldemort without Dumbledore there. And if Dumbledore died in the very first book, let's just leave it at Harry probably wouldn't have done very well in the future. And I think that's it. I think that's the episode. Very fun episode, a little bit shorter, but I am absolutely not complaining. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. It's very cold out now. And here in the northern hemisphere, it is creeping towards the winter days. It is, I think, December 4th. Today, I'm recording this. You are listening to it December 5th or later. So a very, very nice day, at least where I am. It's a little chilly, like I said, but I hope you can get outside, do some walking, do some jogging. So just make sure you get outside, you do something. Maybe you can even, if you're listening to this, this is your first episode, first or second, go. There's some back catalog you can listen to. Make sure you go listen to some of the other episodes while taking a walk, taking a run. I don't know. Support some people. Support yourself. So that is my health advice. I'm not a doctor. This is not health advice. But anyway, that's my health advice. But thank you for listening. ThePotterDiscussion@gmail.com. Again, that is ThePotterDiscussion@gmail.com. For anything you want to hear or say on the show, links in the show notes for resources if you want to know more. And also, make sure you listen to or watch the Harry Potter trivia show. It is on live television, so you're going to have to set your DVR, but make sure you watch that because it is a very fun time, and I might be making an episode about it. Maybe. So, watch out for that. Watch out for a ton of fun episodes coming to you in the future. But that is it for this episode. As always, use information to your advantage, and I will see you later.
This was the Potter Discussion.